are live. I'm so excited. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. And I know that some people are gonna joining little bit by little bit. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. But tonight, I said tonight because it's already dark here. It's 5 o'clock, and that's what winter is about. But I'm so thankful that my friend Steve Morello accepted to join us on my channel this evening to talk about photography and nature photography. So Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
You're welcome. You know, you should actually have come up here in New Hampshire because you don't live very far from me.
No, yes, I should have went there to be in the studio next to you.
Exactly. Although the roads were quite bad tonight, we had quite a lot of slush and
Oh,
snow and things like that.
already.
Everything is fine where you are in Maine?
Yeah, it's raining, which is really good because we've been in a drought, but now the rain is coming back, so we're happy.
Oh, that's really good. Yes, where I live, so I live in the White Mountains, and we have the Pemi River, and it's been really dry. It's been quite a dry summer for us, so it's good that we're getting a little bit of rain and hopefully more snow. We really need it in the mountain. It's been so dry, so I want to see a lot of great wildlife and bugs. So hopefully. We'll see that with a lot of rain. We need the rain.
Yes, yes. hmm Otherwise,
And
have Little River photo workshops used to river photo workshops.
yes, exactly. And I
Yeah.
see a few people. Diane is, hey, we know her from Massachusetts. Good to see you too. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate. So again, any question, if you are in the chat tonight, just tell us where you are from. Send us questions as well. It's going to be fairly relaxed. We're going to talk about wildlife and nature photography. I really want to talk to you, Steve, about your career because it's we actually had presentation, the two of us, a week ago for Teen Mountains, and I always learn something new from you. And your career is so amazing. I said that if I end my career the way you started yours, I would be very lucky and very thankful. So you were not a photographer. That was not your first passion.
No, no. I was a field biologist. I was researching whales off the coast of Cape Cod, and it was a long time ago. So it was when science first discovered that you can identify humpback whales by the patterns on their tail. And so the reason for me to have my first camera was, in fact, to use it to identify whales off the coast. But I quickly found that I really liked pressing the button. And I liked it enough that I wanted to do more than just take pictures of excuse me, of whale tails. And I wanted to add a little bit more. So, I started reading about photography and things of that sort. And then I got kind of really lucky. I think my career is a long list of being at the right place at the right time. And National Geographic was doing a book on the seashores around the US. And the photographer that they hired to photograph Cape Cod National Seashore hired me to be his kind of assistant and go-to guy and the guide around the Cape. And also then we were supposed to go out whale watching for a few days. And he eventually, he was working there for a while, and eventually he saw my images and said, we're supposed to go out for a few days, but I don't think I'll be able to duplicate what you have. And I would love to use those days to do other things. So why don't we send your images to my editor? And if they like them, they'll buy them, and I can use those days. And it turns out they did like them. So they bought a bunch of images for their book. And so my first sales were to National Geographic. And that was a big plus. And then my next really big thing came when the travel editor at the New York Times, who was friends with the editor that I dealt with at National Geographic, called him up to say, "Hey, my photographer on Cape Cod that I use retired. Do you know anybody?" And he said, "Well, I just bought these photos from this guy out on the Cape. Give him a call." So the New York Times
Yeah.
called me up and said, "We have this story we'd like you to photograph, and you think you can do that?" And of course, I said yes. I had no idea really what to do, um, but I was very, very fortunate insofar as after the Nat Geo book came out, I kind of got the reputation for being, well, if you're a photographer and you want to photograph on Cape Cod and you need an inside guy, call Steve. And so lots of photographers, and uh, they were kind of high end photographers. They were from various publications, would come, and we would go out and I would help them, and they would answer all my questions. And they were very, very generous with their knowledge and their mentorship. And even after they left, I would be able to call them if I had questions. So that's what I did. Um, and it was under the tutelage of those people whom I really learned photography from. So um, yeah, so I was very, very lucky there. Anyway, so it proceeded. So my resume now said National Geographic and the New York Times,
And that's how
and
you started.
that's how I started. And then I started getting more and more calls from people who wanted photographs, and it got to the point where I had to make a decision. What did I want to do, photography or biology? And I chose photography, and it started going up from there.
But your background as a scientist had a it's a huge plus, because I've seen a lot of people, like for me, I don't have that background. I'm a French teacher, and I feel like, if only I would have gone to biology, that road, because I feel like I'm missing a lot and I'm constantly trying to learn more. So it probably is a big advantage. But are you going back, like, so I feel like you always had that huge connection with whales. I love this photo, by the way, of the whale tail. Do you go back on the boat? Do you have still connection with the scientific world?
Well, it's funny. I do not here in New England. I'm on the board of directors of Alaska Whale Foundation,
Oh,
and
wow.
I go, and that's one of this image that you're seeing there is from Alaska. So I occasionally go up to make images up there, and having that science background, if you're going to be a nature photographer, you don't need to be a biologist, Emily. You need to be a naturalist, and you
That's true.
certainly are a naturalist. And as you get out there and your bugs, your butterflies, your birds, whatever it is. Obviously, the more you know about your subject, the easier it's going to be for you to make compelling images because you're going to know what's special about that individual subject. Um, After um, I had my little opening into the photographic world with Nat Geo and the New York Times, one of the things that started happening, some of those calls were from, well, a conservation organization that at
Mhm.
the time was called Save the Seals. Now it's called International Fund for Animal Welfare. And they asked me if I would go up to the Gulf of St. Lawrence to photograph harp seals for them. They wanted me to photograph the hunt, which I was against.
Mhm.
I early on made the decision that my images were going to be to celebrate the subject and not to horrify people with the bad things that people are doing to them. So I said, no, I'll photograph the seals, but I'm not going to photograph the hunt. And fortunately, they had decided on this experiment where they were bringing up a group of people to try to replace the hunt with tourism. And
Wow.
so I went up with them, and harp seals was, was a marine mammal. So that was kind of my next foray out into the assignment world there. And I did that for a number of years with them. And because of that, uh, I got more work from Geographic, and I became a research photographer. So there used to be, back in the days of old, a department at National Geographic called uh, Research and Grants. And so
Okay.
they would send me around the world to photograph the researchers they supported, and obviously the subjects, the animals that the researchers were researching. So I did that for a long time and worked for Nat Geo doing that. And then World Wildlife Fund said, hey, we'd like you to do the same thing. And I said, sure. Um, and so for World Wildlife Fund, they actually gave me enough work that I was still a freelancer, but it almost was full time. And I started traveling lots of places around the globe to photograph animals and to photograph the researchers as well. But it brought me everywhere, to the Arctic, to Antarctica, the Everglades, to Africa, to all over the country, all over different places. So my career really kicked off there. Plus, I was working, doing the different articles for magazines as a freelancer. I continued to work for the New York Times when they had a story up here. Um, so, and the more I did, the more I learned. Um, yeah. And
So were
well,
you able to pitch your story? How does that work? Or were the New York Times, for example, the one contacting you and said, well, we need a photo for this, we're doing an article? Or were you able to pitch some stories that you really care about?
well, for the New York Times, it was the travel section.
Mhm.
And so they typically gave me about 4 or 5 stories a year, but that was all on them. Fortunately, 90% of them were all nature stories. One
Okay.
article I shot was about traditional codfish recipes of New England. So I started in Boston and I visited probably 50 or 60 restaurants along Cape Cod, photographing codfish dinners. And that, uh,
Photographing, or can you test as well? Because I feel like if you
oh,
want to do a good job.
yeah, everybody wanted me to eat their dinner. And because they're pitching, for whatever reason, they always thought that I had say in which photo would illustrate the story. So, I was at Legal Seafoods in Boston, and they were saying, oh, we're going to make this really good thing for you, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's not that I don't like fish, but I don't want this codfish dinner at 9 o'clock in the morning. And
Mhm.
so it would end, and I'd say, I'll come back. And they would, yes, yes, by all means, come back and, have dinner on us until um, the article came out. And they missed a lot. Most of the restaurants missed the point of the restaurant. The point was traditional codfish recipes. That traditional recipe
Mhm.
ended up being at a fish shack in Truro, Massachusetts. It was a fish cake, a fried fish cake. And the photo was a paper tray with French fries and 3 codfish fish cakes and a paper cup with Coca Cola written on it. Whereas the fancy wine glass with wine and very elaborated, decorated
Hmm.
plate stuff from the fancy restaurants. They weren't interested in them because they were all modern takes. Um, so anyway, all those other restaurants, I, I went back
So
for
now
them.
are you
And guess,
banned from those restaurants?
yeah, I tell you, I could have had fish cakes anytime I wanted. Honest to God, this little fish shack. I mean, it was a fish shack with a picnic, two picnic tables on a gravel parking lot, right? And people were calling up and making reservations. And they're like, we're a fish shack. And they literally had to hire someone to answer the phone so that it didn't take away other people cooking and things. But they had to hire somebody for that season in order to answer the phone at this fish shack because people wanted
Amazing.
to reserve a spot.
You know, that's my favorite. I think when you are a photographer, and especially when you're traveling and you travel, you you go and see those little like places where it's only local, and that's so important, and it's part of being a photographer as well. You're discovering the culture, you're discovering the local people, and there's very often local people who are going to give you the best location or the best,
Yeah.
hey, I've seen, you know, this type of bird that you're looking for over there. Do you get that? Do you, when you travel, because so you are instructor, correct, right now
Yeah.
for Lin
For National Geographic expeditions and Lindblad
Lindblad?
expeditions. So I teach photography on board, um, which, you know, a lot of the people who come on these trips are using their phones pretty much. But I try to get them to make a step up. And
Mhm.
on board, we have OM system cameras to loan people. And so, you know, I try to say, hey, listen, borrow a camera and a lens, and I'll help you out there. And we get a fair amount of that, but a lot of it is just phone photography. So I talk a lot about composition. Um, but I do get to travel, and a lot of times when possible, I might get there early or stay late to do photography on my own
Okay.
because, you know, basically it's always better on your own
Yeah.
instead
So
of a group of 20 people. But so
you
there,
do have that flexibility. You
yeah,
do spend a lot of time with your guests, but you also have that option to have a little time for yourself when you're traveling.
yeah. And even on the actual trip, because most people are photographing with their phones, they're out having a great time, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. But um, I'm just kind of okay. I can do what I want. I can go and photograph the penguins or the whatever, and do my own photography. So it works out very well.
Do you feel like, what is one advice that you can give to people who are going to workshop like this? Because I've seen a lot of people who go to some workshop or expedition and they are basically kind of on their own. They have an instructor, but they don't really use their instructor the way they should be doing. Do you
Yeah,
see that in the field as well?
absolutely. And the thing that I say is, don't think of your phone as a phone. Think of it
Mm.
as a camera, because when they think of it as their phone, they think of it as just their phone. And they continually make what I would call just quick snapshots. But, you know, if you put the thought into it, a camera is a camera. And, you know, using the right angles and looking at what direction the light is coming from and waiting for the animal to do something animated or something like that along those lines will give you great images. You know, it used to be that it was a phone with a camera. Now it's not that way. Now it's a camera that
Yes.
can occasionally make phone calls, unless you live here.
Yes. You don't have a signal.
Yeah,
Same. Same where I live.
yeah. Hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
have a phone. I do have a that's, yeah, most of the time use it as a mini camera. Um,
yeah.
I see a lot of people in the chat. Yolanda, Cindy. Hey, Cindy. I know she said she was going to be here. Tim as well. These are people that we know from the workshop. So thank you so much for joining us. Even some people from France. Christian, thank you so much. He's saying he doesn't understand English. You know, YouTube is going to start putting subtitles. So you'll be able to rewatch these videos with subtitles in later on when it shows up. So Christian,
Mhm.
tu peux rester et regarder la vidéo, ça va être en français, ça va être tout remis en français sur YouTube. C'est un nouveau système qu'ils installent. Just translating that you can stay and rewatch this video in French.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, we're
And
international.
yes, and we have Kathy actually. She has a question. And we know Kathy as well. It's good to see you. She just got the 8 to 25 and wonder how you liked or dislike this lens. And happy holiday to you too, Kathy. Thank you for joining us.
Mm.
Do you have this lens? Have you shot with this lens?
I don't. I have the 7 to 14, but I was looking at that lens last night and thinking I should get it, because you can never have enough lenses, right? But I think that's a wonderful, wonderful range. I mean, it's a super wide telephoto, the equivalent of a 16 to 50.
Mhm.
And that is a great range, to be able to go super wide. And it's great glass. It really is a nice lens. And then to have also what we would consider the normal lens, the nifty 50,
Mhm.
that's a wonderful range for carrying around if you're in a place that is good for scenery, but also maybe you might want to do something a little bit closer. Yeah, I love super wide. I tend to go at, and Tim is saying that he loves the 8 to 25. A great lens for landscape and street lens. And that's exactly my train of thought that I was thinking last night looking at the lens, that it would be great for carrying around on the street and a great landscape lens. I tend to I need to push myself to use the 50, the 35, the 100 lens
Mhm.
range, because I'm always thinking in terms of super telephoto or super wide, and
Yes.
I really love them both. I love all the lenses. And actually, I did a test. Now, uh, I don't want to sound pompous, but I used to go to the Galapagos quite often. And so one of my trips, I decided, I was always telling people that, um, you know, it's the lens. Take a lens and go out and practice and exploit the qualities of that lens, and don't worry about the lenses you don't have. So to kind of put my money where my mouth is, I only took a 24 millimeter lens for my whole trip, and I absolutely loved the results of that trip. Just making wildlife images with a wide angle lens. In the Galapagos, you can do that because you
Mhm.
can get close. But yeah, I was not unhappy at all with my results. So
It's a
it's a great.
yes, it's and I love that like you can do those 1 week challenge where this is the only lens I'm gonna use. And very often when I travel, I I don't like to have too many lenses because then it's in my head and I change things and I start paying attention to my gear more than I'm paying attention to my story or to my subject. And for me, the way my brain is wired, it's very detrimental. So I do own a lot of lenses. I do not own the 8 to 25. It's a lens that I'm also looking at. I know Lehigh, Chris McGuinness, they have fantastic image with that lens. They love it as well. So it's definitely going to be probably my lens that I might buy soon. Maybe we should talk to OM System and tell them, can we buy one, get one free? Probably not. But yeah, it would be a great challenge to just use this lens for a week and in different situation and see what you can get. Do you do that? So you did that in the Galapagos, one lens. Do
Yeah,
you? do little challenges for yourself as well from time to time, especially as I assume you must be revisiting the same places with some of the trips.
Even here on the property, even
Mhm.
just walking around where I'll say, I'm going to use this lens today. I mean, we all do it when we get a new lens, right? When the
Yes.
the 90 millimeter macro came out, we put that on our camera and went out to do that. So we all kind of do it, maybe not thinking it in those
Yeah.
terms, but I often will just say, I haven't used this lens for a while and I don't want to lose touch with it because it's good to remember what your lens does and how the world looks through this lens. And maybe I don't use it often, but I might really want it for one occasion or so. So I will take a lens and put it on the camera and go for a walk with Joe, my dog, and see what I can come up with, because
And
it forces you to think differently. So
and
I think great
hopefully
part.
it's not gonna eat the lens.
Well, yeah, he did one, not the whole lens, but parts. So,
You have to bring Joe at the end so people can meet him. Not
uh,
now because you never know what can happen if you have it now.
yeah. Uh,
uh, and I see a lot of yes, Tom and Lisa are in the chat as well.
oh,
Uh, yes, great. Oh, and actually, Lisa is saying to everybody, we're having a. It's true. We should talk about that. So you
yeah.
talk a little bit about the fact that you have your own property, you go and photograph on your own property, but you also have workshops on your own property. And we were very lucky because six of us were able to do a workshop for 3 days. And actually, a couple of people who are in the chat tonight also joined us. And it was such a fantastic experience that we decided to do it again.
Mm,
And we actually have some spots left. We sold really, really fast for our first workshop. And this time we're offering a 300, not 30, a $300 off, a $30. That's not okay.
yeah.
300 is much better for the second retreat. And so Lisa is posting it in the comments as well. Um, and yes, it ends on Monday, so you have until Monday to get that deal. So if you are interested, I will
Mhm.
post it in the comments. Actually, I'm going to show it on the screen. But can you tell us a little bit about your property? Because so you're doing workshops all around the world, but you recently acquired a property in Maine, Southern Maine, and you have been doing such an extraordinary work with this property. Can you tell us a little bit about your idea behind it?
Sure. And Woofy Ovi has said that he's never done a workshop in 15 years of photography. It's time, buddy. Come on up here and join us for this workshop. Read what the other people are saying about last
Yeah.
year's. But so I was living in Massachusetts and I wanted to live in Maine. I always loved Maine. And I was looking for the right place. And I found this place. It's 7 acres, mostly woods. There's a little waterfall that we have when it is raining. And it had meadow, although at the time it was just spotty grass here and there. Um, but we found this property and purchased it. And my thought process was that here I was going to have a piece of property for when and if I ever retired or slowed down or things of that sort, um, where I can photograph. But I knew then that the property needed a lot of work. Most of what we saw was introduced species and invasive species. We hardly had any diversity in terms of bugs or wildlife. We live in Maine, in rural Maine, but
Mhm.
we didn't see any animals. So we started rehabilitating the property, and COVID came. And I thought, wow, I'm not traveling because it's COVID times. And what if I never get a chance to travel again um, because of this? And I was wondering, well, I have this property and I teach photography, and I could do that here. So I invested a fair amount of money and a lot of time to start rewilding the property. And we planted our first meadow, and um, it was quite the learning process. But over the last, say, 4 years, we've learned a lot and kind of got our act together. But now we have a small meadow, but it's quite beautiful with tons of diversity of native wildflowers. And we planted lots of native shrubs. We occasionally plant a native tree here and there, but the forest looks pretty good. Um, and we are on the little river, so we have these various habitats. We have a little wet meadow as well. So from the well, throughout the year, because it's beautiful when it's snow covered and things as well. But from early spring, when the first wildflowers are blooming in the woods, through the end of September into October, we have flowers, we have pollinators, and it's just wonderful. And sometimes I can't believe it myself when I go out in the middle of the summer and just sit at the edge of the meadow and watch the amount of butterflies and birds and other insects, and the diversity of wildlife in general, the small mammals to the larger mammals, has increased just by making the habitat better. And if you improve the habitat for one thing, you're improving it for everything. So over the course of time now, we have more birds nesting, more mammals visiting us, um, more and more butterflies and insects and things of that sort. And it's really, and when we had our first macro workshop, it was such a joy seeing the place filled with people and seeing them using the property for what I had envisioned. And it was just really great. And before that, when you and the other instructors, the other ambassadors came up, Lisa and Tom and Emily and myself, we were out there in the rain, right? Photographing the flowers and the bugs. And it was, Lisa especially, because she's very effervescent when she finds things she likes. And you would just hear her say, "Oh my God." And it was great. It's great to see what has happened to the property.
And it feels like home. You pull in your driveway and it's just such a peaceful, relaxing place. There's always something that's happening. You photographing the bugs, but you hear the bird owl, the coyotes.
Mm.
It's really is a really special place that you are able to rehabilitate. So we're very thankful. And last time I had a workshop with Lisa, she was like, "We're going to Steve." And I'm like, "Lisa, it's 40 minutes to Steve and it's opposite where you're going." She's like, "Oh no, we are going. I don't care." She's-
Yeah. So, and we're always improving it. We have a photo blind at a bird feeding station. And I was just saying to you, we're going to add a second one this winter. So there'll be another one there. We're always planting more, and we're always adding bird houses and things for the birds. So
Mhm.
it just keeps getting better and better.
What's your favorite part of this experience so far
Oh, I, you
with
know,
the Little River workshop?
yeah. Well, for the workshop, it is having people out there and hearing them get excited about what we have here. As a matter of fact, we went to dinner last night, and one of the people we went to dinner with is he does trail maintenance for one of the local land trusts, and he was a student of mine here last year. And he last night at the restaurant, he just couldn't stop talking about his macro photography that he did here and how it opened
Oh.
him up to a whole new world. And he never thought bugs could be that exciting. So when you hear things like that, you see things like that, it's very, very fulfilling.
I
And
agree.
I mean, I just in the summer, the sun is up early, and I love being out there at 5:30 when the world is waking up and the light is coming, and there are bugs and there are flowers, and it's my favorite time to photograph out there.
And also, I love like Southern Maine because you're so well located. I feel you're very close to the White Mountains. I know you're also offering workshops there, but you have the ocean next door, you have the lake region. It is such a rich place to photograph. You can literally do anything. You want to do street photography, North Berwick, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Boston. It's next to you as well.
Mm.
So it is a great location that you picked. What was the calling? Why this place was? Did you had an idea of
Um,
Southern Maine or?
Actually, I thought I was going to end up more mid coast, a little further north, because that was
Mhm.
an area I was more familiar with. But I saw this property, and it was within an hour's drive from where I was living. And I looked at all the photos, and I thought, I'm going to go visit this place. And I called a friend of mine who is a contractor, because I knew the house on the property needed a lot of work. And that, of course, we need to live someplace. So um, we came up, and I fell in love with the potential of the property, which is dangerous for me because it was potential, and it
Yes.
meant I needed to do work. And it I said to my mom one time that COVID was the incentive for me to do all this work, and it enabled me to get it done, to have the time off, because I know if I was doing it in dribs and drabs, it would never really get done. And my mom said to me, "Oh, so there is a blessing to COVID." And I thought, "No, Ma." I said, "So many people have died, and I
Yeah.
hate carrying that burden that it all was for me to be able to plant some flowers." But anyway, it it really worked out, and the contractor told me that I could renovate the house for the money that I would have left over from buying the property. And yeah, and it's always a constant work in progress, inside and out, but it's well worth it.
It's worth it. And as you say, so COVID, that is truly a tragedy. A lot of us suffered from COVID and still suffering. We still have repercussion from what happened. But it's true that you always have to find the silver lining. And I feel like great work of art came during, the pandemic.
Mm,
That's when you are in really, really dark places. That's where you'll find people emerging as and showcasing some of the most influential work that we've seen in our society. So always have a silver lining. But it's true that what you are doing with these properties is truly exceptional, and I really hope that more people will come and benefit from it. So thank you for inviting us. And I know that Wolfie said I can't come because I have a little dog and I can't travel. Wait a minute, if you have a little dog, you can come to the US with a little dog. I have a lot of friends in Europe who travel with their little dog if it's really a truly little dog.
yeah.
So
And we're dog friendly here.
yes, but also in the UK, we have a lot of friends. OM System, if you are OM System photographer, they have fantastic Garant and all those guys, the two Claires, they're doing fantastic workshops. So you should definitely go and check and try it, because I love to photograph on my own. That's my favorite part. I like to be alone, but it's good to also be with instructor, look at what other people are doing and be inspired, because you might feel like, well, I've been doing the same thing for 15 years. I'm feeling a little bit stuck. I would like to try a new technique. I would like to have a different idea of how to address one subject, or maybe there are technique that you've never heard of that you might be exposed when you're doing workshop. I think that's one of the plus of going and registering for a workshop to me.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. At, I mean, same feeling. I love being out there alone. I do my best work alone, but when you do
Yeah.
have the opportunity to share it, um, the days when you and Lisa just came up, or you, Lisa, and Tom were here, and being out there with my friends and making great images, there's nothing better.
No, I agree. Yeah, that's the best thing, and I always feel like, okay, if I have a time where I feel like, oh, it's getting a bit dark, then it's good to find friends to go out and photograph and to enjoy being in nature,
Hmm.
and look at all the beauty around you and learn new things. I always learn new things when I go and photograph with people. So yes, it's good. And there's a discussion going on between Tim and Lisa about cell phone and coverage.
As I said, you can't use the phone here. And Tim, if you're still listening, next time just ask, I'll lend you my phone.
That's very nice. Oh,
I'm calling. Yeah.
there are some company who does work where you are, but it's true that it's rural, and that's what you're going back to the basic. Maybe you don't need your phone, or if you need your phone, then it's okay. You can a few steps. There are a couple of spots on the property where
Yeah.
you'll have good coverage and you'll be able to check. But it's a full immersion. It's complete.
Mhm.
Um, I had prepared a couple of questions, but I know that if anybody in the chat also want to ask Steve any questions, please do so about, his time as a photographer, publishing, anything you want. That's the right time to ask him. But I have one question for you while I wait and see if anybody has specific questions. Um, what if you had one advice or multiple advice that you want to give to nature photographers, what would it be? What's your main advice that you usually give?
To get out there. Um, there's a quote, I can't remember it now, but it says to the effect, um, if you're at home or you're inside, you will only hear about things that have happened. But if you're out there, things will present themselves to you. So, you know, put a lens on a camera and take a walk, and things will happen. Um, you know, how many times have you been out there and said, "Oh, if I only had my camera"? Well, bring your camera. There's a simple answer to that issue. And just be out there. And the other thing is to be patient. And the other thing, one other thing besides being out there, being patient, is to really understand that we don't learn from our successes, we learn from our mistakes. So don't be discouraged by mistakes. Don't be discouraged by the blurry, the poorly exposed, the bare branch where the bird used to be. That's how we learn. So it is a numbers game always. No matter how good you are, people will say, "Oh, how many images do you have to make before you get a good one?" At my stage of photography, at your stage of photography, Emily, or some of the people that we worked with, we make bad photos. Absolutely. I make tons of photos of my shoes as I'm walking and hitting the shutter release with my thigh. But it doesn't mean that every image we make is terrible, except for one. It means that out of all of the images we make, there's going to be one that really stands out and that really talks to us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, if you make 100 images, that 99 are crap. It means that one really makes a difference. If you make 1,000 images, it's the same thing. So it doesn't really matter. And if you make one image, maybe that one image was great, maybe not.
Yeah.
But, it's not a matter of specific numbers. It's a matter of making lots of images so that you can discover the ones that really say something to you, that really speak to you.
Yeah, that's true. And James said, yes, I have very nicely composed photos of branches that have no birds. And it's true that, there is, I don't know, maybe it's because of social media. Like everybody, every time you go out, it's like, well, that's to get that one shot. Well, first of all, what does that mean, to get that one shot? Like, that's shouldn't be your main goal when you're going out. In my opinion, I go out to enjoy nature. I never know what I'm gonna get. As a nature photographer, most of the time I'm gonna come back with nothing really. I'm probably going to erase most of my photos. And I think you are actually probably going to correct me, because you love quotes. You have a book of quotes.
Yeah.
And it's Ansel Adams who said that if he has, what is it, like 10, 12 good photos, that's a good crop for him.
Absolutely.
A year, I should precise, a year, not
Yeah.
per day. And I think what we've seen with social media right now, it's like, oh, today I need to post, I need to post, I need to get that image, I need to do that. And I think it's at the detriment to our art and a detriment to our subject, because we're pushing limits that probably we shouldn't be pushing. I don't know. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like there's been an evolution with photography?
Oh, absolutely. I really didn't consider myself even worthy of calling myself a professional photographer until 10 or 15 years ago. And I've been photographing professionally for almost 50 years, for National Geographic, for World
Yeah.
Wildlife Fund, for, the New York Times and Smithsonian and Ranger Rick. But I didn't really feel like not that I didn't know enough but I kind of always thought, and I hope this never really goes away, that it is a constant learning experience.
Mm.
Um, I'm here to teach my students, but I learn from my students every day, every time they come out here. Um, Hanging out with you or Lisa and Tom or Chris or anybody. And I I am not the technical person. I'm an OM photographer. To be an OM photographer, you kind of have to be a little technical, right? But I'm always calling you up to ask you questions about, oh, how do I do this again? Or this isn't working. For me, really, I'm not so much into the technical. I'm into the making the image. Um, if you use your camera enough, the technical stuff will come,
Mm.
right? And then you'll remember what you need to remember. But it's really not about the camera. Sorry, OM. Um, OM is the best camera to use. When you're dealing, actually, I really feel it's true. Obviously,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be an ambassador. That the OM system allows you so much more than the other systems really do in terms of computational photography. But with that said, it's about the photographer. It's not about the camera, And a quote that I really like is, when you go to the restaurant and you have a great meal, do you say, "Oh, my compliments to the pots and pans"? So it really is about the photographer. The photographer's making the decisions about depth of field and shutter speeds and ISO and the light and the angles and the perspective and what to use and what not to use in terms of what the camera has to offer.
Yeah.
It's the photographer, it's not the camera.
Yeah,
So,
it's a recipe. To me, the camera accompanies you and helps you create your vision, right? I still want to have a camera that I can take out, that's going to be reliable, that's going to be light. But what is important to me might not be the same for another photographer, right? That's what we have, all those different systems. But the most important, yeah, is the time you're spending outside, getting to know your subject, getting to know, same your camera. You need to be able to change setting very fast. You need to have basic understanding of composition, some rules, break the rules, but before you break the rules, you need to learn them. And then the most important is that, you let other people feel something, because that's what photography is about. It's capturing light,
mhm.
and what light are you bringing to your subject? That's really what in my opinion photography should be all about. And and I think we spend too much time about how many likes or how many clicks we're getting, and
Mhm.
I've seen that getting in the way of a lot of photographers nowadays, and it's all sad to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I, if anybody follows me on Instagram, they will know that I tend to post in bursts. Where I'll do 5 or 6 days in a row, and then I'll do a week or two without posting anything. That part of it really isn't that important to me. I know it probably should be more so, but it's not. And often, you know, there's another quote I like that says, "You don't turn it off." So when you go for a walk, and I go for a walk in the woods, if I'm walking Joe in the morning and I don't have my camera, I'm still making images in my head. I'm looking at things and I'm thinking about, oh, if I was going to make an image, this is what I would do for that particular thing. And James Taylor, I just want to do a shout out that James Taylor came to our little thing here. Even James,
Uh-huh.
you're not the James Taylor that I don't know, that I love. I'm going to tell people you were. Anyway, he says he has lots of pictures of bare branches and things. And sometimes I'll look at a branch and think, if I had to make a photo of that branch, which would I do to make it a compelling photo, to make it a good photo? I tell people when I teach them, when I did assignment work for the Times, they would say, you have 3 days to photograph this story, or you have 2 days to photograph this story. And it didn't matter if it was raining or snowing or
Mhm.
blowing a gale. I had those 2 days to fill the needs of the story. And it was up to me to make images, not to say, oh, it really wasn't a great day for it. I can't, I need time. That's not how it worked in the professional world. So um, you need to be out there to be able to figure out how to make the images work. And that's actually one of the things that photography has that got me excited about photography. In the old days, we had manual cameras, we had manual lenses. It was, you in the early days, we had a handheld light meter, not even
Yes.
built in. And it's gone so much further. But all of those innovations, I mean, we use the AK diffuser for our
Yes.
macro work and things like that. That came about because some photographer realized he needed to create something to allow him to get an image. So he created the diffuser, or he figured out, the plamp. He needed a way to keep a flower steady, even in the wind, or for longer exposures. So he invented that. And photography, for me, has been creative before you get to the actual image. It made you do things and figure things out. I
Yeah,
really like that about photography.
it's the fun of it, right? So how can you create that picture you have in your head? Because I like to go out without any expectation, but I always have like vision of the type of images that I would like to do. So when it's coming in front of me, I'm ready for them. And actually, I wanted to show that it's a little bit. Um, there was one question because it's already 5:44, and I know we could spend hours and hours together, but I also want to be mindful of your time and mindful of everybody's time. But Wolfie has been asking us if OM1 with the EVF that fogs up behind the glass. 1 hour, 2 hours, yeah, no, that should not happen. I would give a call to OM system, and they would, yeah, let them know your issue, and they will take care of you. But one thing is, so it is going to be Black Friday. Black Friday is a great time to go and get good gear. What type of gear would you recommend to have? I know you talk about the AK diffuser. I think I saw Zamir actually in the comments Samir is amazing. Great, great company, family owned business, always innovating with their product. Um, you talk about the clamp as well. I have one. I love it. Any other gear that you say, hey, it's gonna be Black Friday. You should go and look at those products.
Yeah, and we're talking other than lenses and camera bodies.
Yes, yeah, because I think lenses and camera bodies. I think
Yeah.
everybody will expect us to.
Yes.
It's
Well,
OM for us.
I'm a tripod guy. I
Uh-huh.
know OM's image stabilization is off the charts, but I'm still a tripod guy, partly because I'm about to turn 70. And, as you get older, you get shake. And so, but even without that, if I'm using a short lens and the light camera, and I'm holding it as steady as I can. If I can't use a tripod, I'll lean against a tree or use a monopod or try a bean bag. I always like to have something extra because no matter what, you're not going to be as good as a tripod, a nice sturdy tripod. So I certainly recommend tripods, cable releases. If you don't have a cable release, it's a fairly inexpensive, great stocking stuffer for yourself.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, lens cloths. I have probably 20 or 30 lens cloths because I lose them a lot, but I always find them because I lose them in pockets. I forget where I put them, but I and here's a little insider thing. If I'm ever with you and we're photographing, not you, Emily, per se, but with any of the listeners, and you say, "Oh, my lens is dirty. Um, do you have a lens cloth I can borrow?" I typically will, but it's not the one I use because what happens is people will clean their lens and then they'll wipe something off of the outside of the lens or the back of the camera where you get oil from your nose and things. And then I don't want to use that on my camera lens. So I have one for loaning and one for me using. Um, just so that someone doesn't, without thinking, wipe off the back of their viewfinder and get
Yes.
oil from their face on my cloth that I'm going to put in the front of my lens. But all those little accessories, um, the lanyard to hold, which I got from Lisa and Tom, to hold your cable release, right? But those little things, it's a great time to get a diffuser, the round diffusers. I use them quite frequently when I'm out photographing because I like to control the light or a deflector. Um, Things of that, a ground cloth. I work in the woods and I have to be
Mm.
concerned about ticks. So I have a small little ground cloth or, an insulate pad that I use to lay on to just insulate me from ticks, things like that. So yeah, there's, 100 things. Write in the rain pad so you can take notes in the field, or there's always
You
things.
have one of those rain pad?
Yes, we have a few around. I'm looking like I see them on the wall. Yeah, half the stuff I have, I forget I have. But yeah, yeah. So things like that, they're always handy and usable. You know
I
what?
like that.
Uh, Paper clips, but the ones that are not just the slide on ones, clips. I carry those around when I'm
Mm.
photographing bird nests because it's not okay to cut branches and leaves
Yes.
away. Um, no matter, so, animals are where you find them for a reason. And when I need to hold back a blade of grass or something like that, I'll clip it,
Yes.
piece of string. So that little kind of stuff I have in my photo vest, the photo vest. you know, buy yourself 6 or 7 extra camera bags because I think it's a requirement that we all have multiple camera bags.
It's a bit ridiculous how many camera bags we have. It's like the never ending story because there's always going to be a camera bag that's going to be better than the other one. And the
Mm-hmm.
search for perfection with camera bag is there should be a book written about camera bags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So
Future project.
yeah. Mm-hmm. So
Well,
yeah.
well, it's already 6 o'clock, and I don't want to be too greedy with your time because I feel like I should have you back on my channel again because I feel like I have still so many questions
I'd
that I
love
could ask you.
and yes. So don't forget about our macro workshop. And then Emily and I have a special one in the spring
True.
for woodlands and wildflowers. It's a 1 day event that we're going to be doing. So if you'd like to, you're kind of in the area and like to join us for that. Um,
It's
yeah,
right here.
there you go. Woodland and Wildflower Workshop.
It's
So
gonna be very fun in June 21st.
yeah, for the first wildflowers that come up in the woods because there's no leaf cover. So
Yes.
that's the first place they bloom.
And James is saying, yes, please do return.
Yes,
We
indeed. Thank you.
we're gonna plan that. Maybe we should have one at Lower River. We
Ooh,
should do a live from there. How
that-
fun would that be so people can see your property?
yes, yes, love that.
That would be very fun. Maybe we should invite a couple of other OM system ambassadors too. I know Lisa is already driving. Tom, get in the car.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Hmm.
But yeah, that would be really, really fun. Kind of do a live from the property, and maybe we'll take questions that relate to. Maybe we'll do a macro, maybe we'll do a bird one there that might be of interest. If you have other ideas of things that you want us to talk about, just put them in the comment, and Steve and I will probably go back to all the comments for those of you who are joining us after the live. This video will be accessible actually in a few minutes, so just go and post any idea. Just let us know. Oh, Kathy, I just saw Kathy is here too, from Florida. She said woodland photography, terrific. Join us, Kathy. That would be very fun to see you there and to have you. So yeah, definitely. But thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody
Hmm.
because it's the season.
However you
Um,
celebrate that holiday.
Yes, I hope I will see you very, very soon, Steve,
Yeah, it was
because I'll cross the mountain very soon to come and see you.
okay. Very good. Or I'll come up.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope this was an interesting broadcast for you. And definitely was for me. I always enjoy talking to you, Steve. So thank you so much again for sharing, your stories, your experience with us. Really appreciate. And we will see you all hopefully very soon, maybe at one of our workshops.
I hope so. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.